Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey Aurora and from me. Well, I am going to start off on a rather disagreeable note today. Those of you who have access to X, Twitter, will know that I was forced to post something on Sunday, which I am going to ask Sean to post the clip of Stephane Guerlain going to his father's house and threatening his father's partner of almost 20 years that basically if she doesn't do as he pleases is the reality of what he was saying, which is that she gets out of his father's life so he can have free access to his father's everything, because of course she is a block between him and total control, that he is going to poison her horses. Charming. Now, I have been in touch with Stephane Guerlain, as all of you know, and he has ignored my approach because, of course, he dares not answer my questions because he knows that any answer he gives will hang him. So I have now been twice in touch with Bernard Arnault, who is the head of LVMH, which, of course, is the company that bought out Jean-Paul Guerlain and the Guerlain Perfumes. And I am getting the runaround from Monsieur Bernard Arnault. Why am I getting the runaround? Well, I'll tell you why. For the very same reason that Monsieur Bernard Arnault so courageously threw Jean-Paul Guerlain to the wolves when he simply used a statement that is actually very flattering of the quality of labor that black people do give, because my experience, as I had to point out to English Heritage when I was doing up Castle Goring, was that I wanted my Jamaican builders because Jamaican workers are better than practically every other workers. And he used a very old-fashioned expression to make the point how hard he was working in developing his sense. And it was an old-fashioned word that fell foul of the racial police who don't seem to understand the difference between condemnation and praise. And of course, what did Bernard Arnault do? He threw him to the wolves. And he is clearly dodging this bullet, figuratively speaking, of course, because he doesn't intend to do anything to actually assist. It is becoming very apparent to me, notwithstanding it is his duty as a human being to do it. Well, I wouldn't ever buy anything from Guerlain or Louis Vuitton, Moet Chandon. It's LVMH. So it would be, I'm not sure that it is, I think it is Moet Chandon and Hennessy, which is a real pity because I know and like Jacques Hennessy and have known him for many years. But nothing to do with LVMH will I ever buy until such time as Bernard Arnault gets me his assurance that he is going to bring this absolutely, completely unacceptable situation to a halt, which he can do with one phone call to Stephane Guerlain. And so far, he's not done it. And I think it's absolutely appalling. So At the end of this, we will post the clip of Stephane Guerlain. It's in French, sadly, but I'll tell you what it says. I'm now going off memory, so I'm not exactly. It says something along the lines of. Let me see if I remember exactly what it says. You really you wouldn't want your horses to be poisoned, would you? And on in that vein. If you want to know exactly what I said, it's on Twitter because I did the translation as well. So without further ado, I will plunge in with other matters as well. It is extraordinary that we live in a world where people of eminence who should really know how to comport themselves systematically fail to do so. Paulina Peter says, Lady C, there are reports William is already laying the ground for removing the Sussex titles. The consensus is Charles won't act, but William will. I have a serious question. Do you think it's likely Meghan has already or will soon legally change her name to Duchess Meghan Sussex? That's a nonsense. Remember, the Queen doesn't own the word royal. Oh, I do remember. I mean, who the hell did the Queen think she was to tell Megsy baby anything? I mean, who did that old woman think she was? I mean, the nerve of that old woman, just because she was the Queen. I mean, she wasn't a star of suits and a proud, confident woman of colour who passed for white for most of her life and makes sure she looks white at all times, except when she has to play the black card, then she bronzes up. Do you think there's a chance she has been able or now will be able to get Harry to concede to changing the children's names too, to Prince Archie Sussex and Princess Lily Sussex, by using this report that William will act imminently? What are the legal implications? And are you aware of anything similar happening in a royal family? Thank you. Yes, I have heard of the report that William has a rather firmer view of matters than the king. Well, shall I say, it makes sense that William would. It also makes sense that Charles wouldn't, because if Charles is very ill, Charles is old, it would be popular with many people, but hugely unpopular with a few. And Charles does not have a long reign ahead of him, no matter what happens. William will have a long reign ahead of him. So anything controversial that he does is more politically valuable and feasible in terms of the dust ultimately settling. So that's one point. Another point is Meghan can change her name to anything. The reality is, if you have a title, it's valid. If you don't have a valid title, you don't have a title. It's as simple as that. Now, there was a Jewish restaurateur who changed his name to Prince Michael Romanov and had a very famous restaurant in the mid-20th century called Romanov's. Well, the pretense was that he was a member of the Russian imperial family, but everyone knew he wasn't. That you also have Prince Frederick of Anhalt, who is no more a prince than Aurora or Mickey are bars of soap. I mean, there's also the Schaumburg-Lippy guy who's floating around in pretense, and he's not acknowledged either. Meghan would simply be making as big a fool of herself as they have made of themselves. Let me put it that way. If she did any such thing, she is either the Duchess of Sussex, or if she's divorced, she becomes Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, or if the titles have been put into abeyance, she becomes Lady Windsor. If Harry's KCVO has not been stripped from him, she would become Lady, in brackets, Meghan Windsor. She wouldn't be Meghan Lady Windsor. She would be Lady, in brackets, Meghan Windsor, because that would imply that she was the wife of a mere knight. And if that's stripped from him, she would be Mrs. Meghan Windsor. So she can change her name to anything she wants. It will only be a joke. It will go along with the rest of her. Simple. Paul Seeger says, Lady C, you're always so spot on and measured with your world affairs analyses that I'm keen to hear what you think of Klaus Schwab resigning and your Prime Minister saying that globalization is at an end. Yeah, let's have a break from Harry and Meghan for the moment and let's address something that is serious, that affects all of us, and is going to continue to affect all of us. And those of you who don't want to be bothered with this, skip to the next bit, because after this is coming more juicy stuff. Okay? More royal stuff. Klaus Schwab really has had to resign because the whole apple cart is tumbling down. As Keir Starmer said on Sunday in the British papers, globalization is at an end. Klaus Schwab wanted to have the great globalist club, with him directing traffic in and out of it. And you had all of these millionaires and billionaires and presidents and prime ministers and foreign ministers and finance ministers and heads of state thinking for a while it was a wonderful idea, when it became very apparent very quickly that it was going to be a worldwide totalitarian dictatorship. Well, of course, those who were at the top would still flourish, but everybody else would. You'll have no money, and you'll be happy, and you won't be able to go anywhere that's not 15 minutes away from where you are, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Well, all of that, as Keir Starmer has just rightly said, is coming to an end. About time too. It's just the trend. It's because people have come to realize that globalization was going to come at the price of civil liberties, of their freedom. Also, it goes against nature, because each human being is, first of all, selfish, then familial, and if they're not, it's a huge red flag. We're not mentioning any names like Meghan and Harry, but it's a huge red flag, and people atavistically recognize that fact. Then they're social within their own subsection of society. Then they are tribal. Then they are urban, then they are national. Do you see how far removed you get to actually then have all of that eradicated? And you're just a Klaus Schwab figure. 2,797,000,000. Not really different from the one before or the one after, even if there are substantial differences. Those aren't recognized by the great state. So that's coming to an end. And the sooner, the better that donkey is removed from the braying section, the better. Now, insofar as the rest of the question is concerned, we are living in really very interesting times, because what they're calling the trade wars are really fascinating. Now, the reality is free trade is a good thing, but free trade has to be free on both sides. If it's not free on both sides, it's not free trade. It's one side taking advantage of the other. Now, I'm no great economist, and I'm not going to tread on Adam Smith's toes or anybody else's, but I will make the point that the Trump has stated yesterday, and I'll quote what he said: oil prices are down, interest rates are down, the slow-moving Fed should cut rates, food prices are down, there is no inflation, and the long-time abused USA is bringing in billions of dollars a week from the abusing countries on tariffs that are already in place. Well, let me put this very carefully. The Fed will have to lower interest rates. Let me actually quote. So will other countries, which will lower US debt repayments. I'm quoting from my notes, by the way. There's obviously going to be resistance to the breakup of entrenched bureaucracies. There's also the deep state involved. There are all sorts of non-governmental organizations that are going to be losing their power. They're not going to want to do that. But already we see that Ursula von der Leyen, who's the head of the EU, has said, immediately in response to Trump's actions, by the way, Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we'll keep it on the table. 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods. So in other words, now that Trump has introduced tariffs on the European nations, they have cottoned on very quickly that if they remove their tariffs, which have been in place for some time, that will get Trump to remove his tariffs and trade can continue on an industrial level. Seems as if the 54% of Americans who have been polled who actually agree with what Trump is doing might be onto something, that, maybe this really is a recalibration. And as I said the other day, the United States of America is nearly $40 trillion in debt. It's unsustainable, and it needs a new way of doing things. Yes, stock markets are down, but with stock markets being down, other things are down as well. So now we get to the deep state element of it. Let us remember that Mark Felt was the deputy head of, I think it was the FBI. He was deep throat. He is the one who brought down President Nixon. He was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, and he brought down President Nixon. He was actually, whether he thought he was behaving from noble motives or not, he was also betraying the trust that had been placed in him. Somehow, I don't think he'd have done it had it been a Democratic president. I make that point for what it's worth. There's also the question as to exactly who really killed President Kennedy and why. And there is talk that President Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was the vice president at the time, had a hand in the assassination of President Kennedy, as did his cohorts in the CIA. Do we begin to see that really there have been all sorts of dirty dealings going on, that those of us who thought the democratic process of government, and I now refer not to the party, but to the system of democracy as a government, was rather more ignoble than it appeared to be to us, who were naive enough to think that it was all sweetness and light. The least government is the best government. I was taught that at college in New York. Thoreau said it. Thoreau, the creator of the system of civil disobedience, the great Thoreau, he said, the least government is the best government. For all its failings, the nation state is actually going to save our bacon. Can you imagine a one world government run by Klaus Schwab? And let's not forget what Klaus Schwab's father was. And let's not forget that Klaus Schwab also showed rather totalitarian tendencies, all under the guise of orderliness and improvement of society. And let's not forget that Adolf Hitler also had a similar attitude. And he even has left visible proof that not all that he did was bad. The Autobahns, they still exist. Let's not also forget Volkswagen. I mean, I have Audis. They are a Volkswagen company. I make that point for what it's worth. And now we'll move on to sexier matters, shall we? Rain Lawson says, it may amuse you, Lady C, to learn that the same dried flowers mix that Meghan sprinkles over all the food on her show is also marketed as a rabbit and guinea pig food on Amazon. It does amuse me. Thanks for that. Maybe I should start a merching company. I could sell tap water from Castle Goring to, well, I wouldn't be able to sell it to my followers on this channel because you're all too intelligent for that. So it would have to be to, oh, but Megxy Baby's followers are not going to want to buy anything from me. Pity, because I could sell bottled water from Castle Goring, $999 for 3 fluid ounces. Buy the dream. Sip the dream. From Mary Shelley to Lady C. From one writer to another. Let your imagination run wild. Buy the dream. And let's not pollute it with taste, because if we did that, whether literal or figurative taste, it would spoil the connection between you and your product. Nyadi, 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 nya. I mean, I will be so surprised if Meghan Markle's products actually end up being a success. She is such anathema to so many people. And who wants to buy that dream? Well, aside from idiots. Marilyn Yaffe says, someone should tell Harry's attorneys that we do not have titled royals in America. He is just Harry. We are not happy with arrogance. Marilyn Yaffe, you're right and you're wrong. Sorry to say that. America is a democratic state that has a democratic government that has, I'm now speaking about democracy, not party politics. But even if it were not a democratic state, it would still understand the courtesies of sovereign immunity, sovereign relationships. And Harry may be just Harry, but he remains Prince Henry, Duke of Sussex, son of the King of the United Kingdom. And until that's taken away from him, he's not just Harry. And even if it were taken away from him and he would become Mr. Henry Windsor, he would still remain the second son of King Charles III, the grandson of Queen Elizabeth II, and in the fullness of time, the brother of King William V. I'm afraid privilege does have its protection, and princes and the elite do have privilege. And the reality is that it can go against them. For instance, when Bulgaria had a communist government, the regent of Bulgaria, the brother of King Boris of Bulgaria, and the uncle of King Simeon of Bulgaria, was executed. Marie Antoinette, Louis XVI, Madame Elizabeth, his sister. So many people were executed. So privilege does have its downside politically when the tide goes against the established order. But until then, I am afraid privilege does exist. And let's not forget that after 9/11, George Bush allowed out one set of flights, all filled with the Bin Laden family, who were ushered out of the United States of America and sent back to Saudi Arabia under the protection of the President of the United States of America. So let's not be blind to the realities of what's going on. So Harry may be just Harry to you and to people on the street in the United States of America, and they may say, oh, in America, we don't have princes. He's not a prince. He remains a prince. Sorry, sad but true. That's why what is going on, and that's why we need to understand what is going on and call it out as and when we should. Roberta says, she said she wasn't coming because she knew she would be booed. She brought Serena to keep that from happening. Plus, when she comes in late, she gets a lot of attention. She grew up Hollywood. She knows the tricks. We all know who she's speaking about, don't we? Yes. And yes, Megsy Baby does know the tricks. Megsy Baby, I think, also couldn't resist a photo op, couldn't resist showing that she was superior to Dr. Sophie Chandauka, didn't like, according to accounts, Dr. Sophie Chandauka, and decided that she was going to put Dr. Sophie Chandauka in her place. And what Meghan wants, Meghan gets, and whatever Meghan does is fine. It's fine with Harry, and it's fine with his followers. But it wasn't fine with Sophie. But yes, she pulled a stunt. She thought she would be able to get away with it the way she's got away with so much else. And what has the result been? First of all, she gave the media a dagger with which to stab her, figuratively, of course. Since this is YouTube, one has to make these things clear, just in case. Having done that, she then tried to get Harry to bully and abuse Sophie Chandauka into lying about what had happened and the effect of what had happened, and to make out that what everybody could see they hadn't seen. And Sophie Chandauka quite rightly said no, which then made Harry and Meghan determined to put Sophie Chandauka in her place. How has that worked out? Because Sophie Chandauka has put them in their place. And what I really find interesting is, although I don't think that colour is at the basis of this, I think colour has come into it. I think power, control, disrespect, snobbishness, arrogance, and impertinence are at the base of what has happened. But I do think after that ridiculous guy, Alex Rayner, said that as far as Harry and Meghan are concerned, Sophie Chandauka was jealous of Meghan because Meghan's a more important woman of colour. I think that colour does come into it, and I think that Sophie Chandauka is right. I don't think it's the determining factor, but I think it was a tool with which brown Meghan would beat black Sophie. That's right. You heard me right. That's exactly what I said. And I think Sophie picked it up far and wide and clear. And what Meghan doesn't realise, clearly, because Meghan has never mixed in a black world until, and even now she doesn't. She mixes in a world of hyper privilege with a few black people who are no longer really subject to anything that's actually of any racial dimension. I mean, Tyler Perry, Gayle King, Oprah Winfrey, they're all beyond black. They're no longer, their skin might be black, but they are no longer, their fate isn't determined by their blackness. And I think Sophie Chandauka picked up loud and clear the contempt that brown Meghan had for black Sophie. But what brown Meghan didn't know was that many black people actually look down on brown people. So, and Sophie's clearly not going to be allowing Meghan to get away with pulling that rubbish at her expense. And quite right too. But yes, Meghan knows all the tricks, but she hasn't yet learned that when you are in the public eye, don't resort to tricks, because people can see through them, and you are going to simply end up being discerned as a trickster, which is exactly what Meghan has been discerned as being. Also, of course, as Bill Simmons said, a grifter. It's only a tale, says. A lot of countries' monarchies are changing, so why can't the UK? Sweden, if the children are not brought up in Sweden, they are not included. That pretend girl is an American citizen. She's also a British citizen. And the fact of the matter is that in the present climate, as things stand with the government we have, and with the tremendous recalibration internationally that's going on all over the world, I don't think we need to have a possibly divisive subject being raised at the moment. That's my personal opinion. I think it would be lovely if Harry surrendered his titles voluntarily, but I don't think this is the right time. And until Meghan and Harry, and I said it in my first book, and I'm going to repeat it because this is the reality, unless they do something that's seriously criminal, I do not see that there's going to be the political will to actually change the system. Now, I think it should be changed in certain regards, and I think it would be a very simple thing to get some things changed. But where the British order of succession is concerned, it's not like Sweden. Although both the Swedish and the British royal families were invited in, they were invited in under different conditions. The Act of Settlement is what determines the British royals and those in the line of succession to be in the line of succession. That requires an act of Parliament, because it's Parliament that invited in the Electress Sophia and her descendants. It's Parliament that has to change it. The King can't change it. There are things he can do, and there are things he can't. But what complicates the British system as well is the Statute of Westminster of 1931, which removed the right of the king to make the sweeping declarations and changes that George VI made, George V made in the First World War in 1917. And the Statute of Westminster of 1931 involves the various other nations of which the monarch is head of state. So I've said this before and I have to say it again. Helena Goston says, I don't know why the family of Lily Safra haven't sued you. You're lucky to get away with your despicable lies, because if you were sued, you'd be just left wearing your underpants. Let's see how long it takes for your libel and slander to catch up with you. If I were you, I'd be definitely worried. Your lies were debunked in the courts of Brazil, UK and Monaco. Helena Goston. You're ridiculous. I'm not worried. You think I should be? I'm not worried. Also, I don't wear underpants. I wear knickers. Oh, maybe you wear underpants. I don't. And I'm not worried because every word I said was true and fair. And Lily Safra didn't dare to sue me when she was alive because she knew I would see her in a witness box and she would have to either speak the truth or condemn herself in the eyes of the world, and she wasn't prepared to do either of those. And can her heirs do a thing? Absolutely nothing. And I am very comfortable about my involvement. Last week, I had lunch with Gianluca Tramontana, Cristina Fanto's son, Rosita Fanto's grandson, Freddie Monteverdi's great nephew. Something is going to be coming out on Netflix. Take that and chew on it. And what can I tell you? You're ridiculous. You're ridiculous. Anybody who believes that Lily Safra was anything but a murderess is stupid. And anybody who could have written something the way you wrote it really has vacant space for a brain. But thanks for writing it. Tara Sahadeo says, Lady C's account of Valda and her attitude towards her black daughter echoes the case of my mother and me. As of my mother's 4 daughters, I am the darkest, and so she hated me and poisoned the mind of my siblings. Ill treatment resulted in me attempting suicide until my eldest brother funded an airline ticket for me to leave the country. So I understand racism even in one's birth family. Very important to listen to that. That is from a black woman. You see, most Britons and Europeans and Americans don't really understand. Fortunately, being Jamaican, I do. And J. Doe says, I am from the Caribbean. I rolled my eyes at your story about the mother with the 2 black daughters. I grew up with this ignorance. Thank you, J. Doe. Yeah, I mean, anybody from a black country will know that colour prejudice cuts always. So, and it's really important that we point this out to people. Otherwise, the race baiters are the ones who profit, not those who want racial harmony. And Donna Relaxing says, Lady C, you are so correct when you spoke of the different shades of skin color within the black community. I'm extremely aware of this. When I was an educator of 16 to 18 years old, and most white people don't know this, but the fabulous director Spike Lee, who only made films about the black culture in America, made a movie about just this exact subject called School Days in 1988. This movie is about an all-black university based on the historical Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and the fraternity and sorority that clash with their classmates on issues of colorism, elitism, classism in the black community. The majority of the film concentrates on the racism inside of the black community and the shade of your skin and texture of your hair. Director Spike Lee movies are all about improving the community in a racist white nation of America. And if Mrs. Thing, Meghan, ever really thought as if she was black, she would understand the community. And that is why the community can't stand her. Thank you so much for that as well. I have been trying for some time now to get across to people that not only is Meghan a total race baiter, but that she is actually quite deplorable in the way she has used race to damage people and to promote herself. I don't know any Jamaican who doesn't care about racial harmony. I've never met one. And I've met many Jamaicans of all colours and classes. And if I, in my own modest way, can shed some light on the realities and complexities that Meghan has taken advantage of to create the tremendous degree of mischief and hostility that she has created worldwide, I am happy to do so. And I started on a moralistic note, and I'm going to end on one and ask Sean to publish Stephane Guerlain's absolutely shocking statement to his father's partner of 2 decades, whom he has done everything in his power over a period of decades to get rid of, having done with the previous partner. She's now Princess Ruspoli. She was not Princess Ruspoli when she was with his father. And he actually accused her of being a gold digger when his father was living with her. Her name was Dacia de Pauvre, and she was very rich. I mean, I have to tell you, I sincerely hope that somebody does something to rein that situation in and see that decency prevails. But do I think it's going to come from Bernard Arnault and LVMH? No, I don't. And I tell you better, I don't think it's going to come from the mainstream media either. And I'll tell you why. LVMH advertises across the board with all of those publications. They're not going to want to jeopardize their advertising revenue. So they'd sooner see a son who has guardianship of his father and his father's income and has his father on a food allowance of less than 6,000 euros per annum. Per annum. So from 1 million to 6,000. Where's the other money, I wonder? I'm sure if this is one of the questions I'd like to ask Stephane Guerlain. But the point I'm making is, unless the public does something about it, and I would recommend that all of you complain to PETA in your country, wherever your country is, because LVMH is a worldwide organization, and so is Guerlain. And report them to PETA wherever you are, and maybe PETA can mobilize the mainstream media, and PETA will hopefully get something going, because I can only start the ball rolling. I cannot roll it down with myself down the whole of the mountainside. It wouldn't gain momentum. I would simply be crushed. So, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a moral issue that should be addressed. Can you imagine trying to threaten to poison someone's horses? I mean, really. And don't think the press don't know about it, because I attached, I forget what it's called, well, I didn't do it, my son did it, to Associated Newspapers, all the major newspapers in this country, Associated Press, Reuters. Do you think any one of them is going to do a thing? No, they're not. You know, as I said, the reason why? Moolah. Greed trumps right at every turn. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. Take good care. Bye-bye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, and press the notification bell? Godspeed. Thank you. Bye.
Bon, vous faites attention à vos chevaux, Christina. Hein? Tu vas bien, maître vélo? Hello. Maître vélo, est OK? Donc, Christina, vous faites attention à vos chevaux. Hein? Ce serait dommage qu'ils s'empoisonnent. D'accord? Non, vous en fichez de vos chevaux? Très concentré effectivement sur son écran. Ouh là 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 là, beaucoup de nouvelles sur le téléphone.